chance can be many things. A chance can help you realize your potential, possibilities, and a sense of purpose. What's the value of a chance? When I was 14 years old, I felt really good about myself. Now, I wasn't conceited, I didn't have a big head or anything like that, but I felt really good about myself because someone gave me a chance. I had a summer job, and I earned $400 every 2 weeks. Now, that doesn't qualify me to be a baller, but for me, in those days, that was a ton of money. Every payday during my lunch break, I'd run to the bank to deposit my check. I would ask the teller to withdraw the full amount and to give me my money in $20 bills. On the bus ride home, I would sit in the back, I'd pull my money out, hold it beneath the seat in front of me, and I'd fan the bills, and I'd count the money over and over again, and I'd think about all the things I wanted to buy and do. The money was well earned. I spent summers involved in ecological restoration work across acres of woodland in the Bronx, New York. I spent my days outdoors surrounded by trees in the forest. I battled the sun, insects, poison ivy, thorns, and I tried to keep from getting lost in the woods. Every day I came home from head to toe covered in dirt with small cuts and bruises. But I loved it. Having a job made me feel a sense of pride and dignity. It also made my father feel proud. He drove me to the interview. He made sure my hair was brushed, made sure that my shirt was tucked in. He helped me tie my necktie. He made sure I arrived on time. He also made me feel very confident. He made me feel like I had a good chance to get hired. Now, although this was over 20 years ago, I still remember the woman who gave me my first job interview, the woman who gave me a chance. Her name was Wendy, and Wendy loved to talk about environmental issues, and she loved to give young people a chance. She also loved to eat granola and wear hiking boots and really thick socks in the summer, but that's another thing. Wendy gave me a chance to learn the value of hard work at an early age. My parents immigrated from Jamaica to America, and they took a chance. They left behind everything that they knew. But when they arrived in America, someone gave them a chance to start a new life, earn money, and provide for their family. And because someone gave them a chance, they were able to model work ethic and personal responsibility. And by virtue of example, these things would become my inheritance. And so having that summer job made me feel just like my parents. I'm sure they disagree with that just a little bit. Each year, over 600,000 people migrate to communities across America in search of a chance. But they're not departed from distant shores like my parents. Each year, over 600,000 people are released from federal and state prisons in search for a chance. Now, I'm the statewide coordinator of an initiative called Project Longevity, and we focus on reducing urban gun violence, and also we work with people who had just been released from prison. We call them returning citizens. They were citizens before they went in. They're citizens when they come out. We try to get them acclimated in their communities. We try to end their associations with violent street groups. We try to give them a chance. Sometimes that involves helping them to get prepared for their first job interview. But it always involves speaking to their potential and their value to their families and their communities. There aren't too many rich people in prison. Most of the people that we work with come from poor communities and poor families. And when they're released from prison, they return to poor communities and to poor families. Now, as a teenager, I was a bit rambunctious. Like many teenagers, I struggled with impulsivity, social anxiety, peer pressure, risk-taking behavior. And during that summer, when I was 14 years old, I was outside, and a friend of mine was running full speed. He was breathing heavily. And when he got to me, he stopped. And he pulled out a small, brown, crumpled up paper bag. And he told me to take the bag, and he said that he'd come back for it later on. See, he was running from the police. I told him I couldn't take the bag. And in pleading with me, he offered me $200. I had to think about that, because $200, that's a pair of Jordans. But again, I told him that I couldn't take the bag. And no doubt, I believe he thought I was a disloyal friend, and he ran off. You see, having a job gave me a chance to earn money legitimately. So, in that moment, at that time, I wasn't tempted by fast money. Someone gave me a chance to work. Someone else gave my friend a chance to sell drugs. A chance can be many things. It can help you realize your potential, possibilities, and a sense of purpose. But certain chances can lead to your demise. See, there was a silent covenant. There was a code. If I had taken that bag and the police caught me with that bag, I couldn't snitch. That's the chance that I was going to take. I risked incarceration. I risked my own freedom. Several years later, when I was 17 years old, a good friend of mine, Dwayne, was shot and killed. Dwayne and I were the same age. Dwayne was smart, funny. He was a student athlete. He was very charismatic. At his funeral, I put my hand on his body, and it was cold and stiff. My heart beat like a drum, and it felt like it was on fire. I saw myself in his casket. At 17, I was confronted with my own mortality. I no longer felt like I had a chance. I no longer thought about my potential, the possibilities, or my sense of purpose. Dwayne's chance at life was stolen from him. What about his murderer? What led him to the point where he would take someone's life? What are we to make of this cycle of incarceration and violence? For me, this was a very traumatic experience. Now, I was 17 years old, so some would consider that an early childhood or a childhood traumatic experience. And there are over 1.5 million people in federal and state prisons, and many of them have been exposed to trauma before they were incarcerated or during their incarceration. The reality is that when they come out of prison and they're seeking a second chance, they're actually seeking their first chance. You see, when you feel like there's a good chance that you'll be incarcerated or shot, it's easy to believe, to think that you'll never have a chance. It makes you want to stop investing in your future. Sometimes we shut down. And the way we view our chances are going to guide our decisions in life. Years later, I had a little hair on my face, a little hair on my chest. I had a daughter. I was working for an internet company, a .com we called it back in those days. But that company shortly thereafter went bankrupt, and I found myself unemployed. I spent months searching for a new job. And as time went on, I grew desperate. And as a young father, I contemplated selling drugs. But for many reasons, I'm very happy I didn't take that chance, because as a black male, I'm 12 times more likely to be sentenced to prison for a drug offense, although white males sell drugs at almost the same rate. So if I had taken that risk, what were my chances? Finally, I got a job interview. Someone gave me a chance. That man, his name was Paul. And Paul, like my parents, immigrated to America from Jamaica. And Paul valued giving people who were sincere in their desire for an opportunity a chance to prove their worth. After months of hardship and rejection, I was now a young father who was employed full-time. Perhaps if I weren't given that chance, I would have been a young father who was incarcerated and separated from his child. There are 1.5 million children who have a parent who's incarcerated. Now that's 700,000 fathers and 60,000 mothers. And when they've paid their debt to society, when they return to their communities and their families, they need a chance. They need a second chance so that their children will have a chance. Given that chance, they'll be able to model work ethic and resilience. And just like my parents did for me, that would become their children's inheritance. It's a way for us to break a cycle. Now, long-term unemployment isn't uncommon. But for returning citizens, people who have been released from prison, it's even deeper than that, because they have the stigma of a felony conviction, which leaves them crystallized in their past like fossils in amber. During that time, another friend of mine named Stephen also became a victim to gun violence. I knew Stephen since I was 4 years old. And Stephen, like Dwayne, was handsome, smart, self-assured, and a very loyal friend. Many of my friends vowed retaliation if we found out who shot Stephen. I felt the same rage they felt. I thought intently about what I'd do if I had the chance to confront Stephen's murderer. How would I respond? Would I retaliate? I also thought about my young daughter. I thought about the new job. I thought about the chance Paul had given me. I thought about how proud my father was. I couldn't afford to throw those things away. I couldn't afford to lose my chance. You see, it's important that as a society, as a community, we support second chances. Because those social connections help to reduce recidivism amongst returning citizens. You see, when someone's connected to their family, to their community, to a job, when they feel a sense of value, we decrease the chances of them returning to a life of crime. We have to support second chances. Years later, I was now in my early 30s. You guys are probably wondering, how old is he? But I was coming home from work, and I had just gotten off the subway train. And as I was walking across the street, I noticed a guy who was stopping pedestrians and panhandling. He was begging for money. And as I got closer, we locked eyes. And when we looked at each other, he asked me to help him with train fare. He told me that he had just been released from prison and that he needed the money so that he could travel to a family member's house who had agreed to take him in. Because since being released from prison, he was couch surfing. I recognized him instantly, but he didn't have a clue who I was. I told him I'd be right back. I walked to a nearby ATM. I withdrew several $20 bills. I walked back to him, and before I gave him the money, I told him that I knew exactly who he was, and I called him by his street name. He looked stunned, as if his past had once again caught up to him. Indeed, it did. See, when I was a teenager, I almost got into a real serious fist fight. And although I was being pushed and provoked, I refused to fight. I also knew I had a good chance to win, but I didn't want to fight. Someone intervened. That someone had a significant amount of street credibility for selling drugs and armed robberies. That someone broke up the fight. Now, he didn't have to intervene. He could have let us go. It was very common during my time, as it is today in some communities, for people to egg you on, to instigate, to push you to fight. But that someone stepped in. That someone gave me a chance to be a kid, to go home that day without having a physical altercation. That someone was now standing in front of me. I shared this story with him, and his eyes started to tear up, and so did mine. And I felt so grateful in that moment that because I had been given so many chances, I now had a chance to make him feel like he was worthy of a chance. There's a lot that we can do. There's a lot that we can do to give people second chances. For one, we can push our policy leaders, our legislators, to promote laws that ban the box. You know, on a job application where it asks you if you've ever been convicted of a felony. By removing that box from a job application, we give someone a fair chance, a chance to get a job interview and to prove their worth, like Paul allowed me to do. We can push our local governments, our towns and our cities to offer young people an opportunity to work, to get a summer job or a job after school. See, working at a young age gave me a sense of value. It's also a protective factor because it allowed me to see the differences between fast money and working hard and earning your money. We can also push our local governments to create a jobs pipeline. You see, whenever you see construction going on in your community or road work, those are jobs. Those are opportunities for people to get a second chance. We can also push the businesses in our community who make money in our community to hire from our community, and that includes returning citizens. And finally, we should encourage social entrepreneurship and viable ideas to create an extension, a continuum of second chances. We all need a chance. A chance can be many things. It can help you realize your potential, possibilities, and sense of purpose. What's the value of a chance? Thank you.